Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 26 of A Year of Change. I'm going to sort of keep on the same sort of topics we've been talking about the past 2 or 3 days, aside from snacks yesterday. Just because I heard something on the radio a couple days ago that sort of fits in with this. We had talked about our first food change and how we really aren't going to be cutting out any specific foods, because as long as we're eating things in moderation, things should be fine. And I briefly touched on the panic that seemed to be brought on when people were saying, oh, you shouldn't eat wheat and everything else. And a couple days ago, when I was on my way to work, I heard something on the radio that sort of fit in with this. And it's something that sort of eludes classification for the right now. And they aren't quite sure where to put it. It's called orthorexia. And I'm not going to get too involved into eating disorders and things like that, because that's something for, way down the line. And people much more educated than I am. But the basic premise of this was that about 20 years ago, there was a doctor that had coined the phrase. And what it is, it's people's obsession with eating, quote-unquote, healthy. And by that, I mean gluten-free and macrobiotic and Paleolithic diets, what would be considered to be quote-unquote clean, pure foods. And what happens is they start out light, and then it gradually starts to consume more and more and more of their life until eventually it gets to a point where it takes up the majority of their day just preparing their food and avoiding other types of food, and they can't go out to eat with friends or anything because they have to have a very specific diet. And part of the problem is that because their diet becomes more and more and more restricted, then they don't get the nutrients that they need, and they start getting sick. And so they, like most things that go this way, they sort of up it a bit, thinking, well, if I eat healthier, then I'll get better. And it's apparently resulted in a few deaths, and right now they're trying to get it to be named as an official eating disorder. Right now it isn't, but there are a number of people that are trying to get it classified as that. So it just sort of fit in with what we were talking about throughout the week, that while we aren't really cutting out any foods, we are sort of starting to replace some with dates and pickles and... What was yesterday? Grapes. There we go. So I just I thought it was something that fit in with what we were talking about during the week. Now again, this, just like the wheat thing, this is one doctor who had coined this, but apparently it's been ongoing for about 20 years, and people, it does affect people. There are some people that say that it's a form of OCD that seems to revolve around food more than an actual eating disorder, and I think that's why they haven't sort of classified it in the same vein as anorexia nervosa or bulimia. So, without getting too deep and down and scary, I just sort of wanted to reiterate that if you're starting this with me, we're probably halfway through week 4 now. I don't want to get to a point where you're cutting out this, that, the other thing, and trying to go overboard for what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, the vast majority of people that you think of as being bulimic or anorexic don't look like me. They're in, when they start out, they're generally in, the sort of the normal weight class. And then as things progress, they get lighter and lighter and lighter. Or, yeah, I guess that would work. They start weighing less and less and less. So these aren't for people, this program isn't for people that are within that ideal weight range. It's not even really for anyone that is, 20 pounds over. This is designed for people that look like me. People that have literally hundreds and hundreds of pounds to lose. I mean, you're more than welcome to join in if you have that same eating compulsion that, or just all junk food, or you just sort of want to look at these things to get some tips to eat healthier if you eat a lot of junk food and not much else. I had mentioned before, I have a friend of mine that he's I don't think he's ever been overweight in his life, but he just eats nothing but junk food all the time. But he rarely eats, and I think that's sort of why things work out that way. But I don't ever want it to get to a point where you're staring at yourself and going, oh dear God, I need to lose more and more and more. I know I've said in the past, and I'll continue to say, that looking the way that we do is not attractive. There are those few people that find that attractive, and good on you. But in general, it's not an attractive shape to be, just perfectly round or lumpy or rolly or whatever we are. So I still think that that's a valid issue, saying that this is attractive and this isn't attractive. And your opinions may differ, and you're more than welcome to disagree with me. It's, this is what we're here for. But I don't want it to get to a point where there are some of you that are obviously that you look fine and you're still trying to, lose those last 5 pounds. Or worse yet, that you've already lost those and you keep on going to a point where you're unhealthy again. Because whether you're, far overweight or far underweight, it's not healthy. You're going to feel pretty much the same. You're going to be tired all the time. You're going to be sick all the time. We want to get to a point where we're healthy and normal, not where we're anorexic and not where we're still fat the way that we are now. So when I heard of this, it just sort of sparked it where we were talking about wheat and taking out different foods and sort of replacing things. There's probably very few of you that are watching this that are at risk of this. But I just thought it was something like the documentaries that are on the channel that, sort of fit in well with what we were talking about during the week. And it was sort of a poignant thing that I heard on the radio of all places. So I just sort of wanted to touch base and just to reiterate again. I mean, everyone always has warnings. Everyone always has? Yes. I want to say plural for some reason. Everyone usually has a warning. There we go. Instead of have warnings. Everyone usually has a warning when they start something like this, saying, consult your doctor before starting any exercise program, or consult your doctor before starting any diet program. And, I mean, a lot of those things are sort of common sense, which is why I haven't really addressed it, because for the vast majority of us that are doing this, we have a tremendous amount of weight to lose, and none of us are going to go to our doctor and go, I'm thinking about slowly trading, chocolate bars for grapes. Is that okay? And the doctor will say, well, of course not. That's unhealthy. So that's why what we are doing is a little bit different than a crash diet or something like that. It's because we want to change sort of the core of how we view and react and treat food in general. But I don't want it to get to a point where you're saying, well, I can't have this because it's not macrobiotic flax, or, I can only have pure organic peppermills, or, whatever it is that you decide to do. It's fine to just eat normal food. You don't have to go out of your way to, if you are one of those people that thinks that pretension tastes so much better, then go for it. Have, grass-fed beef and sunny sparkled milk or whatever it is that you're going to eat. But for the majority of us, just regular food is all that you need to worry about. This is why, hopefully, this is going to work. Aside from buying a couple of those special things like the dates, the grapes, and pickles and stuff like that, they aren't anything that's really exotic. They're fairly inexpensive, especially for the amount that you get for them. And you're never going to have to get to a point where I'll say, well, what you need to do now is to go buy the $500 olive oil to drizzle over the rare albino lettuce. It's never going to get to that point because it's ridiculous. You can eat normal food, and you eat it in normal size portions. And once we start exercising as well, no matter how little you do, then that's going to help as well. So it's just sort of a little bit of not really a warning, just sort of a little bit of a flag saying, if you find yourself getting to that point where you only want to eat organic chicken or this or that or the other thing, it's, you're more than welcome to do that. This is entirely up to you, but it's certainly not required. And if it gets to a point where you find you're spending half an hour or 45 minutes or more just planning a meal, And finding, well, I can't really go there with my friends and enjoy myself because they won't have the foods that I'm allowed to eat and things like that, then chances are you're putting too much thought into it. And that's sort of what the problem with this orthorexia is that at the end of things, when things finally get so bad that they have to seek help, there are some people that their entire day revolves around whether or not they're going to be able to eat a specific type of food that, in their mind, they're allowed to have. And it's not to condemn them the same way that I wouldn't condemn someone with anorexia or bulimia or anything else. It is an eating disorder, and it's the orthorexia thing, they're still working on it, but it's generally accepted that anorexia and bulimia are a legitimate eating disorder. Just like when I had mentioned, gluten issues or lactose intolerance, those are legitimate medical issues. If you want to say, well, I'm not going to eat gluten because it's bad for me or whatever you decide to do, then again, whatever you decide to do. When it starts becoming an obsession and gets to a point where you find a lot of your day is revolving around that, then yes, that's probably when you should worry. But I don't think the vast majority of us are going to really run into that. If we were, if we had that sort of personality, we probably wouldn't be as fat as we are, because food doesn't really seem to be one of those picky things. But you never know. People can change, and again, it seems like it's more of an obsessive-compulsive disorder that just seems to be focused on food instead of washing your hands or light switches or things like that. But again, it's one of those things that, you can do your own research, you can read up on it. At the time that this is going up, it's mid-April, and if you're in the UK, it's actually National Eating Disorder Awareness Week there. So, you're probably going to be hearing this a little bit more if you're listening to this in the springtime. But it is worth going in, taking a look, because it's one of those things that should be avoidable, I think. That people seem to get almost afraid of eating just regular foods because they're trying to avoid gluten, or they can't have refined sugar, or they can only have grass-fed beef, or whatever the restriction is. And I just don't want you getting to a point where you're going to start restricting your diet so much that you're not getting the nutrients that you need. Obviously, we're going too far one way right now, where we still aren't getting the nutrients we need, but it's because we're eating cakes and cookies and junk food all the time. But you don't want to go too far the other way. We want to find a nice, healthy balance where at the end of this year, we're eating healthy, we're eating a normal serving size, and just in general, we feel better. So, just something to look out for. I'm going to put a link to the actual radio broadcast. It's about half an hour long, in the description as well of the video. And if you do get a chance, it's another one of those things, not giving you homework or anything, but it's one of those things that you can go up and take a look at. And it's called Orthorexia. You'll hear a little bit more about it in the radio broadcast if you decide to listen to it. But you can go up to Wikipedia. There's a National Eating Disorder website you can go up and take a look at, where it sort of explains why they're trying to bring it in as an actual eating disorder. And it's going to have much more information than I'm going to be able to provide in this. So I didn't want this to be a super, super down video. I'm sure at some point we probably will be discussing anorexia and bulimia, because they're two of those things that are very, very dangerous, and not to sort of swing one way or the other, but let's face it, it affects women much, much more than men. I think just general body image does as well. And that's something that we'll probably talk about at some point later on as well. But I'm going to try to keep these things positive. But every once in a while, when there is something that's important, I think it's good for us to talk about it. Or me talk and you listen, I guess. To a point that we don't really lose sight of not only what we're trying to do, but there are struggles out there that sort of swing the other way. There's a lot of us that have had struggles where, we're overweight. We've been overweight for years, maybe our entire lives. And then there are other people that, as far as we're concerned, look incredibly good. They look how we want to look, and they still feel that they look like us. So I think it's important to be able to at least understand that point of view. But that's something far down the road, something that each one should probably get their own video. And even that 15 minutes isn't really going to do it justice. But we'll talk about a few of those things as well as things progress during the next few weeks. But for now, that's it for this one. We're coming up to the end of week 4 already. So we're over halfway through. Tomorrow, I think I may have another embarrassing story for you. Depending on how things go. I don't want to have it a regular thing where we have an embarrassing story every week because it's going to ruin my weekend. But I think they are important just to keep the sharing going. So I still have a few in the back of my head that I'm going to share with you. But for now, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching it. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.